Thank you, Brenda. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kshitish Patkar. I am in Office of Pharmaceutical Quality, and me and my colleague, Dr. Jin Shu, today will present our talk. This talk is about assessment of extractable leachables information regarding manufacturing process equipment, as well as container closure system that is submitted in ANDAs. So this is the presentation outline. I will briefly introduce the topic of extractables and leachables. I'll talk about briefly what extractables and leachables are. Then I'll briefly talk about various safety concern thresholds that we typically use, an applicant should use to assess the safety of the leachables from equipment or container closure system. Then I will talk about how we assess extractable leachables information in ANDA for the manufacturing equipment, and Dr. Shu will talk about extractable leachables from container closure systems. So just to talk briefly about extractables and leachables. Extractables are the chemical compounds or entities that are released from the surface areas of either process equipment or containers into an extraction solvent under laboratory conditions. Typically, these extraction conditions are exaggerated conditions. That means they are a little harsher than the typical process parameters or process conditions, and that you typically have for any process like filtration, filling, what have you. Whereas leachables are the chemical entities that are released from the surfaces into the drug product under normal operations, like during the manufacturing process and over the shelf life of the drug product. A lot of good information about how to conduct successful extractable and leachable studies is provided in many publications, such as USP Chapter 1663 talks about how to conduct extractable studies. Chapter 1664 talks about design and how to conduct leachable studies. There are also technical documents available, PQRI publications available that talk about in detail extractable leachables from manufacturing equipment or container closure systems, safety control, safety thresholds, etc. So applicants should use all these publications when they are assessing their leachables in their drug products. These are some of the safety concern thresholds for different routes of administration that applicants should consider when they actually calculate analytical evaluation thresholds and assess the safety of the leachables. Most of the routes that are for the chronic treatment, the safety concern threshold is typically 1.5 micrograms per day. For the non-chronic ones, it's 5 micrograms per day. For the ophthalmic topical products, typical qualification threshold is 20 ppm. There are some routes of administration that are considered to be very high risk, such as epidural. And for those, the safety concern threshold could be even lower. And if applicants have any doubts about which safety concern threshold to use for such scenarios, they could contact agency via control correspondence. So I'll just briefly talk about how we assess extractable leachable information submitted in ANDA, particularly for manufacturing equipment. What we typically assess are the study protocols, analytical procedures, data. So we check if the studies are conducted for all the relevant surfaces that come in direct contact with the bulk solution. We also look at if extraction conditions are relevant, are appropriate for extractable studies. We also look at if worst case scenarios are typically considered for extractables as well as leachable studies. For the analytical procedures, we look at if the procedures are fit for purpose, if they are able to detect the potential extractables or leachables, if the reference standards used for these studies are adequate or appropriate, relevant. And then we also look for any method qualification reports provided for these studies, for these analytical procedures. We also expect to see data in that we see, we typically expect to see if the extractables and leachable compounds are individually identified and quantified. And this is the kind of information that's typically we see a lot of applicants do not provide. We also look at mitigation of extractables if they were found above analytical evaluation thresholds. And these mitigation could include engineering controls such as washing the filters or tubing with solvents or bulk solution, or if there are any leachable studies provided for the drug products for these extractables. For the leachable studies, if there are any compounds found above the AAT in the final drug product, then we look for how these compound risk is addressed, whether there is a safety assessment provided for these compounds, or whether applicant again has proposed any engineering controls. If the engineering controls are proposed, we would like to see a data to justify that these controls have worked. That means you may have to carry out leachable studies after the controls have been implemented. So for example, if you are proposing to wash your filters by say 1,000 liters, I mean just making it up, of say water or bulk solution, then we expect to see that leachable studies are carried out after again, and then now they show that there are leachables, those were above 80 before are now below 80, or they are not there or could not be detected. I'll also talk about this aspect of how the data is provided typically in the ANDA applications. So we observe that currently the extractable leachable information typically for the equipment is kind of scattered throughout different modules, and it's kind of tedious or difficult sometimes to even find the information. And sometimes the information could be missed if it is not easily accessible. So what we are recommending to the industry is that they provide a structured summary of the extractable leachables studies that they have carried out, in addition to the actual reports. That means the protocols and the data. This summary can be submitted in a structured format where typically you would use product attributes and the process variables next to the relevant, say, parameters that were considered for the studies. And I'll talk about how it can look like in the next slide. So this is an example of a structured summary. It can be an Excel sheet with different tabs, if you can see at the bottom. And you can see this, the tab number 1 could be the overview of the drug product with application ID number, what the drug substance is, what's the commercial strength, or the lowest strength for the commercial batch size, maximum daily dose, what's the pH, because all of these are very relevant to the actual studies. So if the formulation contains organic solvents, what organic solvents are there, how much, whether it's a chronic treatment or non-chronic treatment, which is useful to determine correct SCT. Then you could have the equipment tab where you have various columns. Column number A would be a description column. You can have the information about the process parameters. So what equipment is used, whether it's filter, tubing, bag, manufacturer, catalog number, surface area that's in contact with the bulk solution, maximum duration of contact, what the temperature for that particular unit operation is, So for example, filtration is carried out at, say, 4 degrees. That's very relevant because then the potential for leachables is lower if the filtration is carried out at low temperatures, and vice versa. Also, if there is any flushing that is proposed, and then along with that, you have extractable study report summary where what have you used as a surrogate for these process parameters in your extraction, and then largest extractable identified, its name, description, etc. And then similar information can be in the third tab for leachables. Again, you can answer some of these questions, or you can actually provide the numbers. So it's up to the applicant. But this is the type of structural summary that we are sort of envisioning, that if we could get it, our life will be a little easier. So what is the advantage of providing this summary of extractable leachable studies is that we can identify if there are any deficiencies in the studies right away. So then we don't have to go through the reports, and dig through the information. It will also reduce the amount of number of information requests for something that we couldn't find, but it may be there. And it's very useful for a data-driven evaluation of extractable leachable information from application to application. And we are recommending that this structured summary be provided in regional information section 3.2.R, and preferably in Excel format. So I have a question for the audience. In what module of the application the structured summary should be provided? Yep, you got it right. So thank you for paying attention, and Dr. Shu will present about extractive leachables from container chloride system.
Thank you, Chris. So let's switch gears to extractables and leachable from container closure system, CCS. Let's talk about the design of extractable study first. So before you do anything, you may want to talk to the manufacturers of the CCS. Ask them if they have performed any extractable study already on the CCS they are setting to you. And ask them what are the materials of constructions of the CCS, any information available from the literature, and look into your own lab to ask your own people if they have performed any extractable study on the same CCS or CCS that has similar components. The selection of solvents and extraction conditions is always very, very critical. It's one of the most critical components of the extractable study. And USP 1663 has a very good and detailed discussion on the selection of solvents and extraction conditions. And I'm not going to repeat here. You can always go to read that chapter. It is very informative. Just like the selection of solvents and extraction conditions, analytical method is another critical component of the extraction study, for the reason that you need a method to identify and quantifying the extractables. When the method is properly developed and qualified, the very same method could be used later on for extractable studies, which is the next topic, design of leachable studies. The study conditions are typically the same as the formal AMTDP studies, meaning that you will put 3 batches on accelerated and long-term stability studies, and you'll test leachables on these 3 batches on multiple time points. And the reason to test multiple time points is to inform the trending of leachables. And you expect that towards the end of shelf life, the level of extractables will be level off. Just like extractable studies, analytical method is very, very critical. The method should be validated so that it is capable of identifying and quantifying the leachables above AET. The method validation is actually nowadays very standard according to USB 1225. You can go there and take a look. But there's one thing I want to bring to your attention is the limit of quantitation, LOQ, which is very, very critical. You want to validate LOQ to the level that is below AET so that you can quantify any leachables that are observed above AET. The calculation of AET is also published in USB 1664. It is derived from maximum daily dose and safety concern threshold, which Chris has presented to you. And if you are not clear about what MDD should be for your product and the assay you should use, you are welcome to submit a control correspondence to OGD for consultation. And I want to remind you that the inclusion of an uncertain factor is important. To account for the uncertainty of the analytical method, a factor of 0.5 multiplied by 0.5 or dividing by 2 is quite common. And this factor is actually dependent on the method. It could be different. Okay. When you see any leachables that are above AET, then you are required to identify the chemical structures as well as perform the toxicological assessment. And when you submit your application, you do need to submit both, not only the chemical structures, but also the toxicological assessment so that we can review your application. Another thing I want to bring your attention is the correlation between extractable and leachable. And this correlation is beneficial to you as the applicant of any application because this correlation allows for the control of leachables upstream at the QC stage of CCS or manufacturing equipment. For example, if you see the leachables are approaching the tox level towards the end of product shelf life, you know that risk is higher. In that case, one of the mitigation strategy is to control the CCS at the QC stage, meaning that you test the extractable of CCS when you receive a lot of CCS and determine and project from that correlation, you can project what the leachable level will be in the product and decide if you want to accept that lot of CCS for manufacturing or you want to reject it. Okay? The correlation will also inform post-approval changes. So it's a good stuff that when you want to make a change to your CCS, you can actually rely upon this correlation to project what would be the leachable of the CCS with the change. And that way you minimize the risk of the CCS with the changes. Developing a drug product based on a risk-based approach is always good to do. And extractable leachable evaluation is no exception. First, you want to look at prior knowledge. You may have already used the same CCS for similar product or different product. By similar product, I mean that you could have used the same CCS for the product of different strength, for example, and you might be able to use the data from that product to support the new product that you're developing with a different strength, given that, provided that the vehicle is the same. You may also use data from a different product packaged in the same CCS to support an application under development that use the same CCS, but the formulation could be different. In that case, you want to be careful though, because you want to compare the leaching propensity of the two different products, route of administration, and maximum daily dose of these two products. And the reason for that is that you do not want the new product to have a higher level of leachables compared to the one that has been developed and approved. There are some routes that are considered not as low risk. For example, oral route. When I say lower risk, it doesn't mean that it is no risk. We know that if we eat wrong stuff, we get into trouble. So the oral route still have risk, okay? You may able to develop a product without performing extractable leachable study for oral drug by referencing 21 CFR 174 to 186, the integrate food additive regulations. If the following conditions are met, Number one, materials of construction should be the same as those specified in the regulation. Use conditions should be the same as those, or the same or less stringent compared to those specified in the regulation. For example, some material can be used to package alcoholic beverages. And if you have a product that is a very simple aqueous solution or suspension, then you should be fine, because we know that your product will not be leaching more compounds from the CCS or equipment compared to alcoholic beverages. The CCS should also be tested according to the regulations using the same method, meeting the specifications specified in the regulation. And another point which is tricky is how do you compare a drug to a food? As an example I gave to you earlier, some materials can be used to package alcoholic beverage. And if your drug is a simple aqueous solution or suspension, then that is straightforward, knowing that your drug will not leach more compounds from the CCS compared to food. But if the drug is, but vice versa may not be okay. So just be careful when you compare a drug product to a food product. So time for a knowledge check. FDA published a guidance for industry, container closure system for packaging human drugs and biologics in A, 1989, B, 1999, C, 2009, and D, 2019. The correct answer is 1999. The year this guidance published isn't really that critical. What I want to bring to your attention is this guidance. This guidance was published 25 years ago, but this guidance, even today, still remains a valuable reference when you qualify your CCS for your drug product. With that, I would like to pass the podium to Derek Smith.
Thanks, Jen. So switching gears a little bit here, we're going to give you an update on the facility assessments ongoing in OPQ from respect to the GDUFA 3 updates, as well as our efforts on inspections and alternative tools. So when we conduct a facility risk assessment, we're looking at high-level areas, within the application. So we're looking at the product attributes, how the product's being manufactured, is there data at scale, or is there extensive scale up that's being proposed? We're looking at the manufacturing complexity of the unit operations, how the applicant has provided data to demonstrate that they understand the state of control. And we're looking also in terms of cross-contaminations. The extractables, leachables was a good kind of connection to this talk. The extractables, leachables, possibly from the processes Chris talked about. Reported deviations, so we're looking back at those facilities. What's going on with the facility? Are there reported deviations? Are they related to the product that's being manufactured? And also any issues that were encountered during the development of the product. And one of the key things that we're also looking at is the quality surveillance information, so bringing in other information and other sources from the Office of Quality Surveillance and OPQ. So how do we make that risk-based decision? So we're first looking at that prior inspection history. So we're looking whether it's a new facility, a new building in a facility that we have history with, or a new manufacturing line within a building. We're looking at prior experience with that similar manufacturing process. So does the company have experience with aseptic manufacturing? Does the company have experience with modified release dosage forms, things like that? And then we're also looking at what information we have from other regulatory agencies. So especially from our partners in EMA and MHRA under the mutual recognition agreement, we're looking at that information to see what can be leveraged and what we know about the site from that to then make a determination on how we'll evaluate the facility. We'll look at CGMP issues relevant to the application product. So obviously if the site makes sterile and non-sterile drugs and the site's having issue manufacturing non-sterile drugs, but not sterile or vice versa, we'll factor that into the assessment. Specific product and process risks, so OPQ conducts a risk-based assessment with the drug product disciplines, the drug substance disciplines, and the manufacturing assessors, and the team will come together and understand the product and process risks and see if we should cover those on an inspection or through a different evaluation. And then obviously when we look at supplements, we're looking at are there significant process changes either at a facility or for the product itself. So how do we make this assessment? So we look at all the risk factors I just talked. Step is to then say, well, okay, maybe we want to do an inspection, but are there other factors that we can consider to then, rather than do an inspection on site, request records from the facility and then evaluate the facility through an alternative tool. And so essentially, sorry, click too many times. So essentially what we wind up doing is we go through this process. Do we need to do an inspection? Do we have other information that can mitigate the need for that inspection? And that can either occur through a records request, through a voluntary remote interactive evaluation, or obviously an inspection. And then once we use that alternative tool, we'll then assess whether the information that's provided back mitigates the risk that we identified. If those do not identify the risks, we can either proceed to an on-site inspection, or we may proceed, if deficiencies are identified, to take a complete response action based on an alternative evaluation of the facility. So as we're doing this, whether it's an inspection or an alternative evaluation, we're looking at the evaluation in the context of the compliance program 7346-832 for pre-approval inspections. So we're evaluating the facility in the context of objective 1, are they ready for commercial manufacturing? Objective 2, are the operations at the facility consistent with what's in the application in terms of the manufacturing process, the formulation, the control strategy. We're then also looking for data integrity, right? So the application, one of the foundations of our review is that we're trusting what you're giving us in the application while we're conducting the review. And so on inspection, we're then validating through the inspection, the laboratory controls, or possibly through remote regulatory assessments, whether there is concerns about the integrity of the data that we're looking at to then inform our review. And then the fourth objective that was added in the most recent update of the compliance program is the commitment to quality and pharmaceutical development. So that's very similar to what you've seen in the surveillance program and the quality maturity indicators. And so we're looking really from a pre-approval perspective, what's the culture at the facility in developing and supporting product development for new products as they bring on new products. They kind of identify the risks associated as facilities continue to build their product portfolio. So when we do inspections, just some quick tips. Make sure that you and your partners, because I know a lot of folks are also working with CMOs. Make sure your facilities and your contract manufacturers are continuing to operate with a state of control, following the regulations and policies outlined, in 211s and the guidances and the inspection guidances. Really stay up to date on what's going on in the facility. Are there trends? Are there issues that are going to flag to the FDA during an inspection that we'll then want to dig further into to see if you're following up and investigating, right? It's not just finding the failure and fixing the failure. It's then also preventing that next failure. And so always document, right? Just because you did something and you tell me you did it, you're gonna have to prove it to me while I'm on the site. And then and sort of in line with that corrective action, the trend, really, monitoring the product life cycle and looking what's going on. Don't kind of avoid or kind of disavow a quality defect report from a consumer complaint or something like that. Really dig in and see if if those complaints that you're getting are potentially a signal that needs that something's going on with the process and needs to be updated. Very similar to that, the point on Objective 4 in the pre-approval program, that robust pharmaceutical quality system that's very mature and that's staying in front of issues rather than reacting to issues. So the other aspect of our facility assessment is the alternative tools, right? So the main one that folks probably are familiar with from the pandemic are the remote regulatory assessments. And so what you found during the pandemic, we have now implemented as a part of our routine assessment process. So starting in October of last year, we in OPQ are actually now leading the 70484s for pre-approval inspections. So during the pandemic, most often the Office of Regulatory Affairs was issuing the records request, and we were collaborating with them on the assessment of the facility for the applications. Now, we are now leading those, so tying directly to the application review. So we feel that's going to bring in a nice strong synergy between the application review and the facility evaluation. To date, we've initiated over 20 RRAs, and so most have so far led to approval recommendations. So we're really hoping that as a part of this, we are mitigating the need to do on-site inspections where feasible, where there is lower risk, and really conserving the agency's resources from an inspection standpoint, and really targeting the higher risk facilities. And so one of the things that we haven't done too much in great volume is the remote interactive evaluation. So we're continuing to look for opportunities to explore that voluntary remote interactive evaluation experience, leveraging what we're learning from various ongoing initiatives. So some tips for the remote regulatory assessments. Treat the records request like you're responding to requests during inspections, right? I mean, this is basically our way of inspecting the facility, but not doing an inspection. Provide clear, accurate records and explain the context of the information provided. It's really critical that, we may ask a question. If you're unsure of the interpretation, really, make sure that you're being clear. I'm giving to you this in response to this, and here's why I'm giving it to you, and here's what it means, so that it kind of prevents the back and forth or doesn't open up questions during the assessment that might lead to concerns from the agency related to what we're seeing. And make sure that your CMOs are prepared for application-specific requests, right? One of the things that we sometimes see, even on pre-approval inspections, is we'll show up and the company will say, "I didn't know I was named in the application." So we haven't necessarily seen that on the remote regulatory assessment side, but just make sure that they're prepared and they understand that the request is in support of the application and how critical that is, especially the goal dates. They may not know the goal dates, things like that. And so some of the resources, just a flag that have been issued recently. So we've issued the alternative tools guidance in September 2023. The remote interactive evaluations guidance was updated in October 2023. That was the guidance that you guys are probably familiar with during the pandemic. And then we've also issued the conducting remote regulatory assessments, questions and answers draft guidance in January 2024. So there's a lot of resources out there, and that's why I'm not going into too much detail. Because these are great guidances to sort of what to expect as we proceed to these remote regulatory assessments. With that, I'll turn it over to Rocky to cover the GDUFA 3.
It's always hard to follow, Derek, but I hope you guys are awake because I have really hard questions at the end. So I'm going to talk about some of the GDUFA 3 related updates, especially focusing on facility related updates. I and Derek come from the same Office of Pharmaceutical Manufacturing Assessment, and we review NDA, ANDA, BLA for manufacturing and facilities. So you saw a lot of what we do on site in terms of inspection related documents, but what changes we made from submission perspective so that you can get a hang of it. This happened like 2022, so we already have a year worth of experience on all these changes. So I'm gonna just touch very briefly on that. So as you can imagine, GDUFA 1, 2, and 3, we are making improvements so that we can enhance the assessment, we can enhance first cycle approval. That's the basic goal. And with that, keep that in mind because we want to make sure that we facilitate timely access to patients. Now, I'm just going to talk about 3 updates which are facility related and what we have done so far. There are lots of other GDUFA-related updates that you heard in different sessions. So the PFC, or pre-submission facility correspondence, I'll abbreviate them a lot in my presentation. So PFC, it was authorized, it was part in GDUFA 2, but we have made some updates in GDUFA 3. So I'll just go over those changes that we made. Then the reclassification request from major to minor, this is a new thing in GDUFA 3, and we have already seen a large number of applications coming in this category. And then the third one is submission with the facility not ready. And we have, this is also new in GDUFA 3, but so far we haven't seen much applications coming in this category. So for PFC, you can see I've compared GDUFA 2 versus GDUFA 3, so it's easier to understand what has really changed. So in GDUFA 2, we had needed all ECTD sections for CMC to be submitted, as well as the bioequivalence report was needed. So this to a requirement. And then we would not accept if there were any changes with your PFC versus final ANDA submission. I hope you all are familiar with PFC. So PFC is pre-facility correspondence, comes 2 months prior to ANDA application. And OPMA reviewers mainly take a look at it along with the filing review, of course. And we make sure that there are no inspection which will be needed when the application comes in. And based on that, we accept the PFC. And so under GDUFA 2, there were no changes allowed. Now GDUFA 3, now we made some changes because we heard industry voice. So now you can present to us limited ECTD information, but also keep in mind that we need information that we would need to make sure that we have enough information to make pre-approval inspection decision. And that's why I had Derek go before me, so you understand what is needed to make pre-approval decision. Bioequivalence report is no longer needed, but you can always submit it. It's always nice to have that. Then the significant changes are not allowed between PFC and ANDA. That means some minor changes are allowed, but the changes should not impact our decision on pre-approval inspection. Otherwise, PFC will become invalid. When you submit your original ANDA application, of course, you submit with BE report. And that time we determine that, oh, we need inspection, we can, then you don't get 8 months goal date. So keep that in mind. So I have one simple case study, like where the PFC was submitted 2 months prior to original ANDA submission. Now keep in mind, you cannot submit ANDA submission within those 60 days. Otherwise, PFC becomes invalid automatically. Don't worry about the dates too much. I have calculated. So say PFC was submitted on a day 1. You had provided adequate CMC facility information so that we could assess whether pre-approval inspection is needed or regulatory remote assessment is needed. We determined in OPMA that, oh no, we don't need any pre-approval inspection. We have adequate information from our facility database and from your submission that this this application facilities, there is no need of inspection. There was no BE report submitted. The entire original and application came after 60 days. Again, I've calculated the dates, so you don't have to worry about the dates here. We determined that there were no changes made in support of manufacturing facility inspections. Assessment, as I said, there are minor changes allowed, but that shouldn't impact our ability to assess whether pre-approval was needed or not. And BE report also did not reveal that we need any additional inspection. So in this case, we granted priority status for the ANDA application. So it gets 8 months goal date. Now, tips for submitting a PFC. So as I said earlier, submit it completely, as much as information you can provide for making our facility assessment. The more information it is, better it is for us. So make sure that it's complete, it's accurate, because we have seen sometimes inaccuracies. You submit some facility in PFC and then ANDA comes in and we contact the facility. They are not even doing your function. So please make sure that you talk to your CMOs, as Derek mentioned, that they are doing the function that they are putting in the applications. The facility need to be ready for inspection. Although we have determined that no inspection is needed, we can always change our decision during review. If we have more information from, say there is data integrity flag that a reviewer comes up with, then we would need to do inspection, right? So it doesn't make you exempt from inspection, but so facilities have to be ready for inspection. And then make sure that you're not submitting earlier than 60 days. The original ANDA has to come after 60 days. Otherwise, PFC becomes invalid. And any significant changes, put it in cover letter. Otherwise, it becomes a nightmare for reviewers to skim through what came in PFC, compare with your original application. So make sure if there are significant changes that you highlight in cover letter. Now, second thing I wanted to talk about, major to minor. This is a new thing in GDUFA 3. So this major to minor classification request comes after CR letter goes to applicant, like you guys, and then we get the request. So that can be requested only if the major deficiency was facility related. So this is new in GDUFA 3. So far, we have already seen a lot of application. I can tell you in 2023 fiscal year, we received almost 61 major to minor classification requests. How many got denied, how many got approved, because we were also learning. So initially we saw that applicants were not submitting it correctly. So facility should be the only major deficiency, and it has to be through surveillance inspection. So Derek mentioned about pre-approval inspection. If you got a pre-approval inspection and your facility was deficient, we would not accept a major to minor reclassification. It has to be surveillance based, and surveillance is like OMQ, Office of Manufacturing Quality, does the surveillance OAI type of assessment, and they have determined that the facility is now NAI or VAI, there is no or voluntary action indicated. So you will have to submit that information to FDA when you are submitting this major to minor request. We will look at it, OPMA gets involved and making this determination. So we will look at it whether facility is truly NAI or VAI, and your CR letter was a year old. It cannot be prior to that. Now we make exceptions when it's a drug shortage or public health emergency. So, but as much as possible, we would like to have CR letters within 1 year, right? So make sure that you understand that, and some of the other requirements that are listed here. Again, there is a case study. We are all in Bethesda, Rockville, so put Rockville manufacturing facility as they got surveillance inspection. So now what we have done since GDUFA 3, we are making prominent for you guys to understand whether the facility deficiency was based on surveillance inspection or pre-approval inspection. So you see the first word following surveillance inspection. Now, this is a little bit old boilerplate that I have put in here, but the new deficiency also will look very similar. So we'll have following surveillance inspection at your facility, blah, blah, blah. And so you understand that your deficiency was surveillance related. The application got submitted, then the surveillance follow-up surveillance inspection happened. We OMQ ORA determined that we can downgrade from OAI to VAI your facility. So now you are ready to submit your M2M classification, right? So you submit it to us. You have to submit that your facility got downgraded. We look in some other information also. So automatically, your surveillance inspection is VAI. If there is some other concerns, residual concerns from process or product, we may deny that. But so far, we have seen a great success. Out of 61, I think only 4 were denied, and that was very early in the program. This year, I was looking at FY24 numbers already. We have 55 in-house. We already received 55 requests. And now I don't exactly have how many we have denied, but I think so far only one has been denied. So it's a great success. This really helps industry move forward with their product and product approval. Now, again, I'm not going to repeat it, but I already said tips for M2M, so you will have this slide. You make sure that it's prominent in cover letter, this M2M request. It's only facility-based deficiency you had in your CR. So if you have other discipline deficiency and facility became VAI, please do not submit. Your application, like your request will be rejected. It has to be only facility deficiency remaining in CR letter, and it has to be only surveillance. The letter has to be only a year or within a year old, right? CR letter. So make sure that you understand, because early on we got some CR M2M requests which were CR letter were issued much before a year. So we are not accepting those. Now, third new thing that happened in GDUFA 3 was facility not ready for inspection. So this is only applicable for original application. When you're submitting original application, if your facility is not ready for inspection, you can check mark on 356H form. That's how we get notification that, oh, this application has a facility not ready for inspection. Automatically, you'll get 15 months goal date. It won't be 8 months, 10 months prior, like we will be giving 15 months. But during that 15 months, you can submit amendment stating that now your facility became ready for inspection. And from the date that we receive the amendment, goal date will be calculated, right? So if it was priority, if you had PFC submitted, then we will assign 8 months of goal date. If it's a standard application, we will assign 10 months of goal date. So again, there is another 15-month period that I'm not going to discuss too much about, but say suppose you don't submit as amendment until 15th month. We automatically extend your goal date to 30 months now. We have commitment to assess 90% of such applications. So in those remaining 15 months, we will try to contact the facility if you don't submit as amendment, because we may have to come for inspection. We have to have adequate time for inspection. So there are some nuances, but fortunately I can say that so far we only had one application that was submitted under this category, and the applicant submitted within first 15 months amendment saying that they are ready. And this could happen. You have natural disaster, you have to shut down the facility, you're not ready for inspection, or something is happening and you are ready with the rest of the submission. So that's why this was included in GDUFA 3, but we hope applicants are using it to minimum extent. We don't want to see this, because we are not going to start assessing unless we see your amendment stating that facilities are ready for inspection. We are not going to even starting to look at it substantially. Maybe we can, some disciplines might start looking at it, but at least OPMA cannot look into it, because we do combine facility knowledge with our process knowledge, and we do that kind of assessment. So application is just sitting in our BPM queue. So I hope that we don't have too many of this situation. But here is one case study. Again, it's a fake example. It's not the real example that I was talking about in earlier slide. But say Bethesda Pharmaceutical, they were not ready for inspection. Still, they submitted the application. And when facility came, so we immediately gave 15 months goal date, right? But within those 15 months, on 14th month, the applicant submitted that now they are ready for inspection. Now we calculated goal date after that date. So they got 10 months because this was a standard application. And I have some tips very similar to what Derek had. Please make sure that you are listing all manufacturing sites. Manufacturing includes testing for us as per FDA. So all testing facilities should be noted down on 356H form. As much as possible, mark them for ready for inspection and have them ready for inspection. Sometimes we find that you have marked it on ready for inspection and we contact the facility or contact the applicant, they are not ready. So it becomes a problem, right? Then we have to withhold, and you don't want to be in that situation. We really want to move forward with first cycle approval. Your facilities should be in compliance with GMPs. Operations should match, because reviewers probably would go on inspection from time to time, and we do look at the operations and matching. And data integrity is a big thing. Make sure that your data is accurate. And of course, I didn't talk about manufacturing unit operations, but OPMA, we do that assessment also. So we want to make sure that our entire manufacturing process is fit for purpose, right? And we have control strategies in place. With that, I'm providing you with all the resources that are already there. We published some guidances and maps on some of the things that I talked. So please read. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to us. But a lot of information is already on website or in the letter. With that, I'll pass it on to Elisa. Thank you.
All right, thank you everyone for having me today. My name is Elissa Nickham and I'm a project manager in OPRO. I've been with the agency quite some time. I've been a chemist for a while and I was a reviewer and now I'm a project manager, so wearing a lot of hats. And today I'm gonna talk to you about the Emerging Technology Program and the Advanced Manufacturing Technology Designation Program, which is a mouthful, and I'm gonna try and use my acronyms correctly. We'll see how that goes. So which program is right for me? The learning objectives today will be to be able to describe the programs, both the ETP and the AMTDP. List criteria of each program. There's some overlaps and there's some differences. And then to be able to apply to the program, so providing some information and helping you understand that process. So a quick poll question. I don't know that this was viewable by those in the virtual space, but maybe by a show of hands. Let me know if you're familiar with either of the programs. Raise your hand. Okay, seeing a couple hands go up, that's great. So we're probably gonna lose hands as we go here. I'm interested in applying to the ETP or AMTD, and maybe that answer will change at the end. Great, I see a hand up. Awesome. And then you have applied. I'm gonna guess the answer is probably no. All right. Oh, you have. Excellent, I'll chat with you later. Okay, I'm going to talk about ETP first. We'll start with the background. It was established in 2014, and if you can do math, I'm still, relatively good at that, I think. We're celebrating an anniversary this year, so we're excited about that, 10 years with the program, and I've been the project manager for about a year and a half. It's a collaborative program where industry can meet with FDA, the ETP team, and it's for development and implementation of novel technologies prior to filing. And when I say novel, it's kind of one of those things where maybe FDA doesn't have as much experience from reviews or inspections yet. And with industry, be able to discuss, identify, and resolve potential technical and regulatory issues. Who is the ETP? We are the emerging technology team, and so we use ETP and ETT kind of interchangeably. The program and the team, the people that you're actually going to be engaging with. It is a small team, between 20 and 30 people. I think right now we're at 28. We have a chair, his name is Joel Welsh. Our vice chair is Tom O'Connor. I'm the project manager. And representation from the Office of Pharmaceutical Quality is most of our membership, as well as Office of Compliance and Office of Regulatory Affairs. And we also pull in SMEs from time to time, people from maybe CDRH or CBER, or also within OPQ, folks who have specific experience on a topic, we bring them in. Talk to you about the criteria for ETP. So having the potential to improve product safety, identity, strength, quality, and purity. And so it's including one or more of these elements subject to quality assessment for which the agency, again, has maybe limited review experience. So for product technology, we might be looking at dosage form or container closure systems. Manufacturing process might be design, scale up or life cycle approaches, and control strategy, maybe testing technology or process controls. How do you apply? We have a website, and I will provide a link in one of my last slides. And so there's a guidance document there. And initially, we asked that you develop a proposal for us. It's about 5 pages we asked for, to kind of keep it short and sweet, and just talk about the novelty and the advancement of it. So it'll have a brief description of the proposal or proposed technology, why it's novel and unique, a description of how it potentially improve the safety, identity, strength, or quality or purity, a summary of the development plan, and maybe some high level, what you think the roadblocks are going to be for you. And these can be technical or regulatory. And then a timeline for a submission, which is not a requirement, but strongly encouraged. And then once you're accepted, you'll follow the Type C meeting format, and that would be a meeting package, and you'll have your questions in there, and we will respond with written answers ahead of time and then have a meeting with you. So just wanted to give you some metrics of the accepted proposals over time. You can see, again, we started in 2014 and just kind of increased over time. Word got out and, interest increased. And then, of course, we had a pandemic, so we lost a little bit of our momentum. But we've had a pretty, consistent engagement over the past few years. And also, what's nice about ETT is it's not a one-time only thing. So you come to us with your initial set of questions, and we answer them for you. And then, maybe sometime down the road, you're at a next development milestone, you can reach back out to us. So we've had a lot of re-engagement with folks. And then just a quick breakdown of the topics that we've generally received proposals on. Continuous manufacturing is obviously pretty big. I do expect over time that some of these other categories might increase, like distributed manufacturing. So now we'll pop over to AMTDP and give you a little bit of background. It was a $1.7 trillion spending bill. This was signed in December of 2022, and it was fiscal year funding for 2023, addressed a range of domestic policy priorities. And under that spending bill is the FDORA Act, it's Food and Drug Omnibus Reform Act. And within that, there were several quality-related provisions, and it was both AMTD and also ETP was included in there as well. So specifically, the language of Section 3213 is for the Advanced Manufacturing Technologies Designation Program, and it was starting a new program, having a public meeting, which we had at about the 180-day mark of, it was last June, and it was a chance to get stakeholder feedback. There's a draft guidance that was published in December of last year, and then there was a comment period this spring. And so we're in the next steps with that. And then also in, I think a couple of years, there'll be a report to Congress based on our success with the program. Who is the AMTDP? So you maybe, the reason I did ETT first, it's going to be the same people. And I think there's an opportunity here for engaging with ETT first. And then once you're to that you've met the criteria of AMTD, you can apply there. And so it is both CEDAR and CBER. We are aligned with CAT as well on this. And you might work with one of us independently, or depending on your project or your proposal, you might be working with both of us. We'll talk to you about the criteria. So per the Act, the kind of the big parts of this are reducing development time or increasing the supply of critical medicines. Let's see. And it's intended for more mature methods and technologies. So the idea is that you'll have more data at this point. And who can apply? The AMTD is open to companies that intend to include a novel technology as part of a regulatory submission, and this can be to both CEDAR and CBER. Let's see if I have anything else I want to add here. So I'll expand on the criteria a little bit. It's a method of manufacturing or combination of methods that incorporates a novel technology or uses an established technique in a novel way. So there's a couple different ways to look at that there. And like I said, reducing development time or increasing or maintaining the supply of a drug that is life-supporting, life-sustaining, of critical importance to providing healthcare, or something that's on the drug shortage list. How do you apply? Again, we have a website and we have a draft guidance. And so there are like the three sort of big things that we want to see in your proposal are to explain the novelty so that it uses an established technology in a novel way or incorporates a new technology. That there's process improvement, reducing development time, or supporting the supply of something that's on like the drug shortage list. And then the key part here and why this would, this is a more mature program, is the model data. So data and information necessary to support the request and is specific to a particular class of drugs. Includes developmental data, including batch analysis generated using either a developmental candidate molecule or a model drug. So the benefits of both programs. A collaborative approach. As I mentioned before, it might be an opportunity to start with ETT and then work your way over into the AMTD process, or maybe you've started with CAT as well if it's a biological product. And you'll be engaging with the same team, the same members. And something we encourage, especially from the ETT side, if you've engaged with us before you're ready for a submission, when you do submit that application, you put in your cover letter that you've had ETT involvement. And so it really helps my fellow project managers identify team members that can maybe support the review. And both of these, it's early interaction with FDA prior to the submission process, timely advice and communication, and having meetings with us, both written responses ahead of and then meetings. And so here's my page of resources for you, the Emerging Technology Program website, as well as a link to the guidance, the Advanced Manufacturing Technologies Designation Program website with the draft guidance. You can look at the specific language from the bill there as well, and reference to that June 8th meeting that we had last year. So in summary, both programs encourage and support the adoption of novel technologies. Both provide opportunities to gain agency feedback, and they both have criteria for acceptance, some the same and some different. And there are guidance documents available for both to help you through the application process. So challenge question number 1. What FDA center or centers are part of the Advanced Manufacturing Technologies Designation Program team? CDER, CVM, CDRH, CDER, and CBER. I'm hearing D in the audience, and that is correct. Yay. It means I did my job. It's really more on me than it is you all. Challenge question 2. When was the ETT established? I think I mentioned we had a little anniversary, and I'm hoping we can get a party at work. I know that we're all busy, but started in 2010, 2014, 2019, or started this year. B, 2014? Oh, yep, you're right. Very good, thank you. Okay, closing thought. We are definitely here to support you. I think it's an opportunity for FDA to learn alongside of you and to help you through the process and kind of hopefully see ahead a little bit. We can help you maybe discover what some of those regulatory roadblocks are going to be. And so if you have questions, please reach out. I will tell you that both of those email addresses come to me. So you will be speaking directly to me as the project manager. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much to all the speakers. Can you please come back up to the podium? So we are running a little late, but let's see how many questions we can accommodate before we break. We may have to take a few more minutes into the break, if that's okay, if we have enough questions. And as we decide which is the best seat here for the camera. Okay, any in-house questions? Who was up first?
Doesn't matter.
I'll go to this one first, the one closer to me, in-house.
Thank you. Hello, and thank you for all the presentations today. My question is for Dr. Xu. With regards to the design of the leachable studies with respect to testing during stability, is there a requirement to include multiple batches of packaging material?
Thank you for your question. So yes, so the leachable study is typically performed during formal stability study using 3 batches, 3 product batches under both long-term and accelerated conditions. And to your question, do you require to have 3 different lots of component closure system, right?
Yes.
Ideal, yes, but we recognize that sometimes it's difficult to get 3 different lots of CCS. So do your best.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next in-house question, please.
Hello, thank you again for your presentations. I had a question for Dr. Shah. What should we put in the submission for an FNR? You mentioned marking it on the 356H, but should we discuss it in the cover letter? And do you want to see it in any other module sections, or what's the preference?
The requirement is it should be marked in 356H form, definitely. Other than that, there is no other requirement, but if you can put it in module 3, which particular testing facility or manufacturing facility, and if you can provide also information on when it will be ready, it helps. We don't take that as official amendment to reset your goal date, but that always helps. That, for example, we had application that came with FNR, but it had that we anticipate it to be ready around March or April. So we kept an eye, and then they submitted amendment during that time. So amendment is essential so that you reset your goal date. But other than that, there are no requirements, but more information you provide, it's always better.
Thank you.
Thank you. Online question, please.
We have a question for Dr. Chris Petkar. Can the agency confirm whether Extractable detected above the analytical evaluation threshold, but once identified and evaluated as safe, i.e. well below the permitted daily exposure at the amount detected, does not need to be included in a leachable study?
Thank you for that question. It depends if you have provided a detailed safety assessment for extractables about AET. We recommend such assessment provided for maybe 1 or 2 extractables, but if you have many extractables that are above analytical evaluation threshold, we recommend you actually carry out the leachable studies and see if they are really present about AET in your final drug product.
Okay, question in-house, please.
Yes, sorry, for Dr. Xu again, please, as a follow-up with regards to the testing of leachables during stability. I know you mentioned that it should be tested on multiple time points. To be specific, do we follow the ICH time points, which is every time point from 0 to shelf life?
If you can, that'd be great. Yeah, but we recognize that the stability study requires many points. For example, 3, 6, 9, 12, and you may not have to follow exactly the stability time points, but at least you need to do multiple points, so that, as I said earlier, that you can testing at multiple points will help inform the trending of leachable studies.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any in-house? No? Let's go online, please.
Next question for Derek. What factors do you consider when deciding whether an inspection can be done using alternate methods?
Thanks. Yeah. So as I discussed in the presentation, we're really looking at how successful the facility has been in demonstrating compliance, both from a general GMP perspective, as well as on prior pre-approval inspections. And then it really depends on what's being proposed in the application. Is the area new? Is the building new? Is it a new operation? That's highly complex. Yes, it depends answer, but it's more about the facility's history and experience and demonstrated history of compliance will generally potentially lead to the use of an alternative tool, and otherwise we'll be knocking on your door.
Thank you. Question in-house, please.
This is for Akisha. So, based on the recent updated guideline of the PFC, it is not needed to submit the PE report as part of PFC. But it says that there are chances that when we submit the PE report in the ANDA, it could result that the inspection is needed. So what are those cases which raise this result? Is it like doing B study at totally different site, or it's about the complexity, or what?
So B site evaluation is not under OPMA, but I can tell you that the reasons that you cited could be one of the reasons, or if there are data problems or data trends that we see that always triggers and facility assessment, and that might result into evaluation, right, on site. So there are various reasons that B report could trigger the inspection for the B site, but it's evaluated by our counter office. So they take a look at it. OPMA is responsible for only manufacturing and testing for CMC. So we do not look into B report and we do not make that call. But when B reports are submitted, that goes to that office and they look at them.
So, okay, so in continuous to that only, can I go, or, okay.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so if I submit the BE report as part of PFC, then also the case remains same, right? Because when if I submit the BE report as part of PFC, it is not going to be in the detailed review at that stage.
That's like, we do not have a requirement of review in B report, but if you submit it as part of your PFC, it's always helpful, right? We can look at it, the OSI can look at it quickly and see, but there is no necessity that FDA will evaluate those during those 2 months period. It's a very short time to evaluate so many things. So the requirement is facility information should be submitted for manufacturing and testing, and that will be evaluated in those 2 months. And we will determine if we have all the information in-house to determine inspection for manufacturing facilities. B facilities has no such commitment in GDUFA, so I can't say.
Okay.
I can't speak on their behalf.
No worry. Thank you.
Second, thank you. Second question in-house, please.
Thank you, everyone, for your presentations. My question relates to extractables. Can the agency elaborate on the expectation for method validation for extractable studies and advice on how to perform the validation when you don't know what the extractable will be?
So at least for the manufacturing process related extractables, we don't expect full validation studies. You can provide method qualification report, or you can say that the method is fit for purpose is what we are looking for really. So we are mostly interested in LOQ, LOD, and if the technique is correct, right? For example, you're looking at inorganics or metal ions, then you have ICP or something like that. Or if you're looking for, say, volatile, then you're using GCMS. So the method should be fit for its purpose, and it should be sensitive as well as it should be adequate. So we are not looking for a full validation, at least for the manufacturing process extractables.
So for drug product, I agree with what Kui has said. We follow the same methodology, fit for purpose, based on risk. But also remember that you also need to do leachable study, right? So when you do a leachable study, you need to qualify the method. At that stage, you may need to fully validate the method for leachable. And oftentimes that the method used for extractable study is also the same as for leachable study. So it depends on what you want to do. You want to validate earlier, that's for benefit, to get it done earlier. But if you want to delay a little bit later for leachable study, and as Chris said that, fit for purpose for extractable study, that would be fine.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. Question online, please.
This question is for Alyssa. Reading the guidance documents, it seems that ETP requires or anticipates a drug application, whereas AMTDP does not, as AMTDP can use a model compound. Is that understanding correct?
So if I understand the question correctly, let me try and cover it, I think. ETP doesn't require an application to be submitted. It is strongly encouraged. It also there's an opportunity for you to pair with someone who would want to do an application at some point. So we do see that the direction that you're going to take the technology. AMTDP, yes, a model drug is acceptable. So you wouldn't have to, but I think again, that expectation is there.
Thank you. We do have a question in-house, please.
My question is to Kshitij Patkar. So in terms of like, if there is a change in an API manufacturer, even though we're using the same API, but we just change the API manufacturer, or there's a slight change in the excipient from anhydrous to hydrous, do we still need to conduct any leachable studies or extractable studies in such cases? Or like an addendum is okay?
If I understand your question correctly, you're talking about the change in the API.
Yeah, with respect to the drug product formulation, would this mean that we need to reconduct any ENL studies?
Right. If the API is a solid that is dissolved in formulation and, typically say like 5%, 10%, their API by themselves do not really have extraction power. But if your API is say castor oil or liquid, or your API basically constitutes majority of the formulation, then maybe. But basically we're looking for extractables from manufacturing equipment, so it's equipment that is more important here. So as long as your equipment remains the same, probably not.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Question from online, please.
We have a question for Chris. Could you kindly specify the subsection or section of 32R, for example, 32R1, P1, 32R2, P2, et cetera, where ENL data is to be submitted?
It could be a section by itself in the 3.2.R.
Okay, we have time for one more online question, please.
Okay, a question for Rocky. Is there any time frame that an M2M must be submitted?
Yes, within 1 year of your CR letter. So if you received CR letter, we have to have M2M request submitted. Your CR letter cannot be more than 1 year old. Or, as I mentioned during my presentation, only in case of drug shortage and some other things, we do make exceptions, but otherwise we expect within a year.
Okay, thank you. We have one question in-house.
Thank you. Dr. Shu, can the agency please elaborate on the current expectations for setting the acceptance criteria for leachables in the drug product specification?
Oh, that's a tough question.
She saved it for last.
So this, we take a loose-based approach, okay? And if you observe a leachable that is close to a tox level towards the end of shelf life, you may want to have it in the specification. But having in a specification may or may not be the best control strategy, because at the beginning of the batch, you don't see leachable because it takes time for the leachable to come out from the CCS. So if you see a leachable that is approaching the tox level, the risk is considered high, you may want to take other approaches to mitigate the risk. For example, can you replace the CCS altogether? Or can you do some pre-treatment, for example, for equipment, so that you reduce the level leachable in the product? Mm-hmm. So there are different scenarios, kind of hard to come up with a yes or no answer in a way. So yeah, so based on risk and come up with the best approach, and then submit the certification to us to certify the approach you want to take.
Okay, thank you, very helpful. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That brings us to the end of this Q&A session. We will break now and resume at 3:05. Thank you so much to our panelists.